Gravity is the first film shot entirely in outer space. What? It wasn't? Huh. But it looks so real. Huh. Yeah, apparently only the actors' faces were real. The rest was done in CG. That's why now we'll be talking to an animation supervisor. Max Solomon from Frame Store will tell us why they decided to use keyframe animation, why animating zero gravity is much harder than it sounds, and how to get started in the industry. Almost everything in this movie is CG. Why would a live-action director choose this path?
It was reluctantly. He always planned and wanted to do it live action with actors in spacesuits on wires. They wanted to build certainly parts of the space station and the space shuttle and film it and light it in a very traditional way. But one of the big things in the film was that he wanted to really simulate the feeling of zero gravity, and they did some tests of actors on wires and very quickly realized that the reason that most films don't have zero gravity, the reason that they ignore the weightlessness of space is that it's very hard to make believable. That's why most sci-fi films in space just ignore it and actors just walk around spaceships as if they're on Earth. And the other problem with it was that Alfonso's style is he likes very long shots. So when you have shots that last for several minutes, it means that everything has to be choreographed, and that's very hard to do when you've got the human element of cameramen, actors, all trying to synchronize and work everything together. Things just become a bit messy. And the film, we were quite lucky because the actors were mostly in the spacesuits. There was a really neat division between the live action and the CG in the helmet. So the join of the helmet became that line of division. Also the glass of the helmet was CG, but that helped to helped to sort of make everything fit together better. Because you had the reflections and the shadows playing over the glass of the helmet, which was CG. Everything, it's really connected the live action with the CG. I think the word is serendipity when you have, it's called a happy accident, but when the accident really helps things to work.
Wasn't it very limiting to have always match to the actor's face? I mean, that was shot in live action.
Well, I think with animation, you always want some strong direction to go from, to start from. I mean, in an animated movie, you usually have a voice performance that gives a strong direction. And often you might have physical reference of the actor whilst giving the performance. So you always, it's much better to work within certain constraints, and I think that helps define and direct you in a certain way. It's very hard if you have a completely white piece of paper to start drawing. It's much better if you have something you can see and that's what you're doing. And Gravity was like that, although we were animating most of what Sandra does with her arms and what happens to her body and how she moves through space is animated. It's not what she did on the set. But that motion, we were always looking at her facial performance and her eye lines and the energy and the emotional performance that she gave with her face. And that very much was what directed the animation that we did. And it was, making sure that all worked together was a very important part of the process.
How did you go about animating? Was it like rotoscoping what the actors did on set, or how did that work?
No, I mean, there was an element in some of the shots, there was some things that Sandra and George did that were useful, but they were always working in gravity. The feeling was never quite right. They weren't wearing spacesuits, so the posing had to be different. And a lot of the times they weren't actually doing anything at all, or even if they were, it wasn't in the context. They weren't traveling through or past a space station, through the space station. So we did try using motion capture as well. We got an actor and we got her to work through most of Sandra's performance. But again, it never really fitted with what Sandra's face did. We tried to put it into some of the shots, and also the thing is with mocap is what you want is for the director to direct the actor to deliver the mocap, and then for the director to say, yeah, that is the performance that I want. That's when mocap is great. But in this case, Alfonso hadn't been involved in the motion capture. And so he looked at it and said, well, yeah, there's some interesting things there, but it's not really what I want. So mainly the motion capture just served as reference for, sort of energy and posing, and but we basically keyframed everything. We actually found the most beneficial thing was for the animators to just go downstairs and put the helmet on and the gloves on themselves and the space jacket that we had, and to work through the performance, just video themselves. And that was a very, very productive way of very quickly finding performance ideas, and also just being able to talk about things and try out new ideas and develop the performance.
Interesting. About the actual animation, what was the challenge about it? I mean, if I hear in space, zero gravity, everything seems like it's just floating around. Is it just that?
It's as complex as if you're animating on Earth with gravity. It's just the rules are different. Perhaps what was more forgiving about it is that we're less critical of people moving through zero gravity. We're all instinctively aware of how things should move on Earth, and so when things aren't quite right, everybody immediately feels that it's wrong. Whereas I think, for a zero gravity movie, I think there was some poetic license that we could take in making things not absolutely right, as long as the energy was good and it was exciting. I think, Sandra, that if she had gone through most of the things in the film, she would have died several times in the film. There was some of the physical stresses and strains that her body endures that, she would never have survived. Yeah, I think when we started, I remember when we were starting the film and we were trying to get animators interested in the project, a lot of them said exactly what you just said, that it would be boring, it would just be astronauts floating around, just being... but actually making it real, making it complex, making it believable, making it interesting was as challenging as anything that we've done before.
You've done a lot of visual effect animation before. What is it that interests you in that kind of realistic style of animating?
That's one of the things I loved about Gravity and I've worked on a couple of Alfonso's other films. And I think what's exciting about visual effects is that you can make things that don't seem possible. It's a bit like a magic trick, or you can do things that people have never seen before, and I think people have an instinctive hunger to see something new, to see something shown in a different way, in a new way. Because there are many great stories to be told, but it's about telling the story in a different way. And that was what was so exciting about Gravity. And I said in my talk that it's one of those films you watch and you think, well, why has nobody ever done this before? There's been so many films set in space, but nobody had ever really tried to show what being in space was like. There's very few films where anything has come close to reproducing, because we've all seen that NASA footage so many times, amazing footage of astronauts, and it's so cool, and yet nobody's ever tried to do anything like that before. And I think that's the reason the film was so well received, that it's the first time that anybody had not only reproduced the experience of being an astronaut, but done it so beautifully. The film looks incredible. Everything about it just works together so well, and obviously it had great performances and a lovely script, and so.
I have two questions from a viewer, namely MidnightInk from the 11 Second Club asks, was it tough to break into the industry, and do you have any tips for aspiring animators?
Yes, it was very tough. I worked as a runner for over a year. That's how I got started. That was in the early 90s, and I didn't even know CG computer animation existed. And I was working at a company that had a very small 3D team who were, this is in 94, 95, and they were just doing very small TV spots, running Softimage version 1.2 or something. And I was very excited by the potential of the tools, and I sort of taught myself. And the business has changed immensely that's sort of 20 years ago now. The good news is that there's an amazing volume of work and thousands of people working in the business, whereas when I started in London, I think there was probably 20 or 30 people doing computer animation. Now there's thousands. But obviously the downside is that the competition is immense. The quality, I look at student work now and it's incredible. I just think the quality of the work is amazing. So it does mean the competition is intense, and but ultimately I don't think that matters. If you love what you do, then that's the most important thing. I saw a Thierry Henry interview recently, and because he's reporting on the World Cup. He was on the TV in England last week, and he was saying that he never thought about what he would get from football. He just wanted to play football. And I thought that was a really great message for everyone. It's like you should just love doing what you do, and whatever comes from it is great, but just enjoy it and do your best. And you will I think if you do that, you'll always be happy because you're doing something you love. And ultimately, I think you'll be good at it because you believe in it and you're passionate about it. And also you will progress, and you will do better because people will feel that enthusiasm, and they'll instinctively respond to it. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. I take every opportunity, never say no to anything. That's another lesson. It doesn't matter what it is. You never know, it might end up being really good. You might think initially that it's going to be shit, but often it's the things that you don't expect that are the most rewarding. And also, I think saying yes is good because everything always leads on to something else. Even if you feel that you haven't enjoyed that process or that project, it will always lead you somewhere else. Just being out there and meeting people and is great. So yeah, just go for it. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Max Solomon from Frame Store.
Now it's your turn to join the discussion. Did you like Gravity? What animation style do you prefer, cartoony or realistic? And how did you get your animation career started, or how are you trying to get it started? Please let us know in the comments below. If you found this interview interesting, please like and share and subscribe to our channel to not miss the next one. share, and subscribe to our channel to next miss. Please let us know in the comments below.